And also got some good topics about the clashing of the First Amendment technology and the law and how it's outdated and what we're going to do. And we're also going to talk about some marital property issues, divorce, and what to do with your firearms, and maybe how you're going to have consequences when, with your significant other or your paramour. So
I think we had this too, right?
Oh, and some 3D printers, weapons. So I'm going to start,
well, with us, Ross, the way it is, we talk about one thing, I text you, say this is what we're going to do, and we basically say, okay, and then before you know it, by the end of the show, it's like, we were started at A and B, and we're at X, Y, and Z.
And we talked about everything's intertwined in the law, and so we get into these gray areas, and it opens up other areas, and so that's just how it works.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's get started. What do you want to get started with?
Yeah, let's talk about the 3D guns. So I'm glad that I said, you asked me, is it going to be illegal to print the blueprints for the 3D weapons? So 3D printers.
We mentioned that last week, right?
Can somebody make their own weapon? We talked about, can somebody make their own weapon out of plastic using these 3D printers? And I said, yeah, I thought that you could make your own weapon. I even thought you could probably sell them as long as you're not selling to the nature and degree to be considered, a manufacturer. I think you could make your own weapon. I think you could sell one or two of them, just because you didn't like them or for whatever reason. But you don't want to get into to enough sales to be looking like a dealer. And you had asked me, well, what about making those 3D blueprints available online to print the weapon? And I said, I don't see how that's even a problem. I think there'd be a First Amendment issue. I didn't even know. I didn't even.
I knew something you didn't know.
Yeah. I didn't even know that this case was pending. Cody Wilson, Defense Distributed, as a little Austin area. The kid was in law school. He drops out of law school because he's basically a libertarian activist for Second Amendment, and so he wants to make this website and data available to everybody. And so he starts uploading these blueprints to make your own 3D printed guns, and in like 2 weeks he's got well over 100,000 downloads. By the time it's over, he's got over 1 million downloads, and here comes the feds and the U.S. State Department send him a letter saying, whoa, you're in violation.
Why though? What's the violation? I wanted to ask you though, is this court case against him being able to sell the prints? Because if you had let's say you had your own prints, you can make the gun. That's not the issue. But why is it an issue for him to sell the prints?
The court case is interesting. It's not actually the state bringing a case against him. He brought him and his entourage of nonprofits brought a case against the government. So essentially, what happens is the State Department says you're trafficking internationally in firearms because there was some downloads coming from overseas, and so you're violating international trafficking laws and not able to do this. Is the same as violating customs and commodities. Things like this, those are regulated, and so the same with firearms, especially with firearms, highly regulated. And so he's talked to a lawyer, said, man, what do I do? He took it down, didn't want to go to jail. There were several civil and criminal penalties that could have happened to this kid. And so he takes it down, get lawyers up, gets the political activist community involved, right? They file suit against the State Department for, among other things, First Amendment rights. And two, it's not international trafficking just to post something on the internet.
That'd be just like, yeah, exactly.
You're not dealing in a foreign country just because somebody in a foreign country happens to download something that you posted here. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they said. He ends up winning big. The State Department ends up paying his legal fees.
Wow.
And they end up saying you can make pretty much all of these firearms available online, except of course for some automatic machine guns and some other things that would probably be illegal.
It won't last more than 3 shots anyway.
But so let's see. We'll see what happens. I think this is very interesting. And my buddy Tim's arguing with me. He's got the California politics fresh in his mind, and he's crazy. I think we're talking about open carry. He's like, you guys can actually just carry that out in the open.
Yeah, we're not a communist country.
But he's having fun down here. It's too hot though, isn't it? It's really hot. But anyway,
I got the AC going. Let's see.
But so he's telling me, what about purchasing it? Is the same as if you're clicking and purchasing it? I think that's going to run some issues, and we don't know what that case is going to be like. This settlement that the State Department came with is a very narrow settlement. I haven't seen those documents, obviously, but we don't know exactly how far this is going to extend. But you're going to have a First Amendment right to post information online for download for distribution, and that's absolutely protected by the First Amendment. There's even been cases of people write books on how to be a serial killer, how to be a murderer, and those books even end up being
Sell
able
like
to sell
hotcakes.
in a lot of situations. So this is
Sick people.
definitely nothing wrong with this type of speech. Nothing more than how to build your own firearm. Okay, and this was a big deal, by the way, because 3D printing is highly technical. The specifications about how to make one of these weapons
right.
is highly technical.
That's why I was making a comment. It's not that big a thing to worry about. It costs so much money for the equipment. The gun doesn't last that long anyway. 1 or 2 shots, it's gone. It's not like you're going to be doing mass murders out there.
Right, but and it does cost, like you said, money to buy the 3D printer. And for the layman, there was no way that they could have come up with these specifications on their own. It would take years of practice, or you'd have to have some kind of expert help. And that's exactly what these 3D designs do. You basically can put these 3D designs into the printer and will do it, so you don't have to figure out how to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's that. I think some takeaways was, like I said, posting something on the internet available to download overseas is not international trafficking of firearms. But I wanted to point out there was another Supreme Court case this year about online merchants and sales taxes. So there was a thing about mail order documents. Mail order documents, you didn't have to pay sales tax wherever you mailed those documents to. Supreme Court overruled that decision. And now online marketers, say in Cameron, Texas, if I got something, a product I'm selling online, if somebody in Illinois, right, wants to buy it, I'm going to have to pay sales tax in Illinois, right, in that municipality, and I'm going to have to know what those sales taxes are. So I would say that's another reason to get a lawyer if you're trying to start up a small business, because you need to make sure that those company documents, your website, everything is tailored, okay, to be able to...
What is that specifically on?
Online merchants. So if you're an online merchant...
Any type of product?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Maybe, I mean...
That's crazy.
I haven't read the entire opinion, but so I'm not going to say every single product, but generally speaking, products in general, yes.
Do you know how many people will not do that because they don't know what they're doing?
Exactly.
Which puts everybody in jeopardy.
A super headache. This was a big case. And so you say, if they're considered to be selling at the location where the information is being downloaded, right? That's what I'm saying. This is going to be a hot topic. Technology, the law is seriously behind technology. And so as trends go on, as technology moves forward, as time moves forward, we're going to see a lot of clashes. We're going to see a lot more things and a lot more money for lawyers. Okay, so
you're going to have that extension on the back of your house looking a lot.
I'm ready, baby. I'm gearing up. Did
you download those blueprints?
Huh? Did
you download those blueprints?
Fifth Amendment. I plead the fifth.
Okay. So but no, wait. I want to show in the video when they see it probably next week. This is from the Telegram photograph. You can see a picture. You can just Google it, but there's a picture of the initial gun that they built, the single shot gun, and after like 1 or 2 shots, it just disintegrated. But it was just kind of cool that you could build it with a 3D printer. It was just a neat idea, just for giggles, right? So, but what's great about that is if you're in some foreign country and you got a 3D printer and you need to just take 1 shot. Voila, in about an hour or 2, you got yourself a nice single shot.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
So, also another takeaway, it's been some good First Amendment issues this year. So, for the small business owner, remember we had Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission about the gay rights versus religious freedom, and did he have a right to not sell to homosexuals? I have no problem with homosexuality. That's fine. You want to do that? I think I was on the position of the cake maker in this small business. You have a right to serve whoever you want to serve.
That's right.
And I don't think anybody has a right to come in there and tell you who you have to serve and what it's for and your beliefs.
Or something like that, but private, hell.
Okay, so the Supreme Court actually, we talked about that in here. It just hadn't gone to the Supreme Court yet. It did. They upheld that case for the cake maker. So I'm just saying there's some First Amendment rights that aren't being put to the wayside just because trends and technology and fashions are growing in a different direction. I wanted to point out, you didn't want to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it anyway. It was a big case, Carpenter versus United States. 5-4 decision, very close decision. It's a Fourth Amendment case. I'm going to talk, man. I always talk about the Fourth Amendment as one of my favorites. First and Fourth Amendments, don't even start with me because you're going to be there all day if we were at the coffee shop. Okay, and I tell you it's useless. Fourth Amendment is useless. Well, thank goodness there's one shot for the defense lawyers. Okay, the FBI was going in there and getting cell site information off of your cell phones. They were doing this without a warrant. I'm not saying that this information is not available, but what cell site information is, we probably know there's towers, there's also other satellite, right? And as we move, right, our cell phone is picking up on those, they're pinging those different locations or pinpointing based on the satellite, and that's called cell site location information. And this has been very important for me. I've actually got clients off to say, look, they weren't even over here at the time that this happened. I've used that information or said, look, this person was over here with this. This is how we know that there was an issue with this. So, but the government was going to the cell phone companies, right, and pulling this data, and they were getting all of the data. So they were actually just able to put a profile. Remember we talked about profiling. Put a profile on the individual. This is intrusive, because think about if they don't really have anything. Okay, in this case, this case, in this case, this guy was probably did rob. Probably was, and I don't know anything about really the facts other than what the holding was and the essential parts of the holding. I don't really know about the facts of that case. Even if he was guilty here, this is a good ruling, because this would essentially let government go into the cell phone companies and just survey everybody and just put together profiles, dossiers on anybody that they wanted to. And the reason is because it's in the hands of third parties. And so traditionally, if it's in the hands, information's in the hands of third parties, there's no expectation of privacy. You've already relinquished your right to privacy by giving this over to third parties who can look at it anytime they want to. Supreme Court says, no, man, a cell phone is different. Cell phone has all of your privacies of life.
Yeah,
we don't expect
exactly.
It's not just like
we
bank
talked about
information.
That. It's like the extension of your brain. You know, it's like your personal thoughts and memoirs and all that.
And it tracks. It's tracking you everywhere you're going. And we talked about this. The only reason there's this conspiracy out there that the only reason they wanted these smartphones to get out in the market is so the government could track you.
Well, it's true.
Okay, and so they could track you essentially. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but it is true. The government was doing it in this case.
Look, if you've got I'm not going to argue with this conspiracy thing, but I'm telling you, it's a fact. If the government has the ability to do it, they're going to use it to their advantage so they can do it.
Exactly, and
will they do it on a daily basis just for giggles? I don't know. Will they do it when they need to find something? You're damn right they will.
Right, and what if they just want to spy on their girlfriend or something like that? Who's to stop them from doing that if they can just simply go to the provider and get it? I mean, it's you know, those things do happen. You said they don't, but they do. Woo! So that's the update. Current updates in the law.
We started at A, B, and C. We went over to X, Y, and Z. We just went right in the middle. So
I had to get that tangent there about the Fourth Amendment. Okay. It was a big win. It was a big win on privacy and data. Okay. So guns and marital property. That's what we're dealing with right now. It's the topic you wanted. We talked about this in depth in one show that was not recorded. Thank you, Matt. Anyway.
It wasn't my bad, man. It was not my bad.
So for you live listeners, you're probably going to get a re-education in some spots. I'm just going to hit the high points. Right? We can't get down into the minutia. We don't really have the time. But we did want to go back over it. I think some of this kind of comes into play. If you get divorced, we talked about separate property and community property. Community property is going to be anything that you acquire during marriage, okay, that's not acquired by gift, inheritance, or devise. In other words, if you get an inheritance from your mother, it's not community property, it's your separate property. If somebody gave you a gift, that's not community property, that's separate property. Community property is going to mean that your significant other, your spouse, has an interest in that property. Now, we're not going to get into like I said, the specifics about sole management community property, right, and joint management community property. There is, right, I'll say this, that if you have sole management community property, you can probably deal with that property.
Clarify that.
Sole management community property is property that maybe wages from your work that you have in your own personal bank account, right? A car that you purchase with your own personal wages, and your wife has her own car. Those would be, each will have their sole management community property, okay? And so you could probably deal with that, but your spouse does have some kind of interest, even though you have a right to deal with it. But it's all presumed to be joint community property. So, you say, well, those are my guns. I'm getting the guns. Well, she's got a right to have the guns.
Say what?
Okay, so
how the heck does
that's
that
some high
happen?
treason right there.
but you have these issues. What if
the curtains are yours, baby, but the guns, man, come on.
And so we see these cases, right? We see these cases, always a strategic advantage, right? There's always these strategic advantages that spouses and couples try to take in these family law cases, and I hate it. And, you know, the great lawyer that we always talk about, Michelle Lemkill and Rockdale, we always get into these great battles. And as I said, we talked about the Facebook that time. We essentially just throw our hands up to this point because she and I fought tooth and nail on several cases, and we're just wore out. We're just wore out on Facebook. It's like, man, here's the code. You go get it. I'm not getting it for you. Okay, so these things can be time consuming, expensive, just stressful for the family. They can tear a family apart even more.
If you're serious about half the guns, what's the deal about that? Or are you just being facetious to a certain extent?
No, I'm not. So I was saying there's these strategic moves that these couples try to make, and one of them is to make a restraining order, okay, or a protective order. Okay, and so this is where we
gotta
get
surrender your
this is
guns.
where we get into the real issue with the restraining orders and protective orders. Restraining order is technically just a temporary restraining order, just saying, hey, nobody removes any property or we maintain the status quo until we can have a temporary orders hearing. At the temporary orders hearing, they're going to be more defined. The judge is going to make certain decisions about the case going forward, because couples will fight. If this is not done, couples will go back and forth, each one just trying to take a little bit more and a little bit more. Each one's going to go for it's going to escalate, and then you're going to have a family violence situation or something crazy, okay? And so we don't want, the wife or husband, as soon as the case is filed, go yank all the money out of the bank accounts, right? So we file a temporary restraining order almost in every single divorce. That in and of itself is probably not going to cause an issue with possessing firearms, but it can. Right? Lawyers will routinely throw something in there about prohibiting the use or possession or manipulation or use of a firearm during the case until we have a hearing, and the judges won't look at it.
That's bridging now into LTC, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then the judge will just sign that order, right? And before you know it, we've got this restraining order, and if you got a good lawyer, they're going to file a motion to quash that. You can't prevent me from carrying a firearm just because you're filing a divorce case, but a lot of lawyers don't, right? Also, you're going to have maybe some allegations, and there was a federal case that happened a couple years ago, and it was nothing more than a restraining order, okay, that had some issues about the husband did some actions, and so he did an agreed restraining order. It wasn't a protective order, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but a protective order is more serious, right? This was a restraining order. He did an agreed restraining order saying that, he went over to the house and he wasn't supposed to, and then he agreed that he would not go back over to the premises and would refrain from committing family violence. Boom! That language right there triggered some federal statutes, okay, that allowed the feds to come back and charge him with a felony on the federal level for possessing a firearm, because he had been subject to a restraining order that involved family violence or family domestic violence. And so he appealed, and we did this. There was some cases, there was litigation that went on, and he said, dude, it wasn't even a protective order. It was a restraining order that I agreed to, and all I would do was agreeing not to commit family violence, right? I was just agreeing to the allegations. So it's very important. If there's allegations made about family violence and things to that effect, and this is going on, do not let the other lawyers say, well, it's just a restraining order. It doesn't really affect you. No. You don't want that language in there. I think it would be okay for you.
Yeah, but you're making it sound like let's just say it's me, and I go over there. You're making it sound like it's just me fighting against them. I'd have you next to me to make sure that doesn't happen, right?
Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You need to make sure your lawyer doesn't say, oh, it's just a restraining order. It's not going to do anything. No, that's not true.
It sounds like what you're saying is their lawyer does not have your best interest in.
Well, of course not.
In mind.
Well, I'm saying your own
Yeah.
lawyer too. This was new, so a lot of lawyers would say, because it was a restraining order, this wasn't a protective order. This wasn't a family violence issue type of order, and so it's not a big deal. You can agree to it. No, the feds don't care. Feds don't care how it's labeled. If it's got the language in there and you're admitting to something that's arguably in a gray area of family violence involving that, you're putting yourself subject and making a risk of falling underneath those federal statutes we talk about routinely that prohibit you from possessing a
How
firearm.
did the feds become aware of it in the first place?
Good question. I was going to ask the same thing. It'd probably be the opposing attorney.
Sounds like
saying,
it was
hey,
a tactical move of the.
And it very well could have been, right? But maybe in the facts of that case, if he had a job application.
Ladies and
Right,
gentlemen,
or,
if you got a question,
I mean, there could have
this is
been many reasons.
This is a topic that can affect a lot of people. So if you got a question, give us a call, 254-697-6633. If you don't take advantage of it and you have that situation, you can talk to an attorney like Ross here for free. You're foolish. 254-697-6633. Give a call. Take advantage of it now.
And so then we got protective orders. Protective orders are a strategic tool as well. A lot of times that the other side is going to allege family violence happened, right, for several reasons. You're going to have child custody issues. If family violence has happened and the judge finds that it did happen, not even in a criminal case, if the judge finds that family violence has occurred and will likely occur in the future for a protective order, then that's going to allow them to ask for sole custody, right, as far as the kids are concerned. It's also going to allow them to get an unjust and unright division of the property. So a division of property is supposed to be just and right. if family violence has occurred and you have proved that, the judge finds that he can grant the wife everything, give you nothing. Say that's how bad, that's how much of a POS you are. Okay, and so we're not giving you anything, and probably not going to do that extreme, but definitely may give them a whole lot more than what they would otherwise be entitled. So there's every incentive and motive to make up and do a he said, she said. Sweet little girl gets on the stand in front of the jury and says, he hit me, and he starts crying. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You better have a good lawyer. You better be able to go into the facts and really just assess the situation and just tear her apart. Okay, now that'd be perjury, and that'd be a reason why she wouldn't want to do it. I think in that bad of a situation, you might have a case, which is why we met Rick Momey, okay, because there was unjust influences and horrific strategy moves being played in a family law case, and we ended up finding out. It got my client charged, two clients charged with first-degree felonies. We ended up having to file a separate civil case here in Milam County. The Milam County jury awarded $3.9 million verdict. It was actually like a $4 million verdict. And during the collection process is how we went. Rick, trying to collect all of the assets that we essentially took from this lady, from everything that she took from my clients. Okay, and so there are avenues for relief, and you just got to make sure that if this happens, you need to have the money, one, right? But you need to have the commitment, right, to attack these situations.
Do you feel in the course of time, in the course of years, that this divorce situation has gotten very ruthless, out of hand and ruthless? You know, back in the day, it was like, hey, this ain't working between us. You know, you go your way, I'll go my way. Just give me the TV because I bought that. You keep the car. Obviously, we'll work out the kid situation. But now it seems like it's ruthless, man. What's going on?
I think it has actually gotten a little bit better from the Supreme Court's making the free forms available online for anybody just to go on. I think people are realizing, hey, I don't need a lawyer for this. I can just do an agreed thing. I think people are starting to see that, man, like this can get expensive. Mm-hmm. And so maybe it's a good thing that the lawyers and stuff are charging so much. But we do still have those cases. I mean, Michelle and I talk, and she's like, I can't believe that they did this to this kid. And I can't believe that they can't get along in this aspect. And so, I mean, yeah, there are these cases that just, like I said, there's a breakdown of the family unit. I always talk about, you talk about the problems that we're having and the things that really affect this country. And I always start with the breakdown of the family nucleus. I think has been a major part of why we have the things happening.
That started in the '60s, but we're not going to go in that type of conversation.
Right,
but it is when it happened.
And so let's talk about child custody though to end on this. You need to be aware. Michelle and yes, I've talked about that jury trial before.
Well, let's get her on with you two can argue.
Yeah, she'd be fun to play around with on arguments.
Of course, she's listening, right?
Oh, I'm sure she is.
Okay, come on, give me a call, 254-697-6633. Let's get you on.
And so, and that's why Rick. He's like, man, I'm Rick died. This is why he's out of this. I'm doing personal injury. This family law stuff is crazy. We talked about the CPS cases and things to that effect, but I've been in jury trials. I've been in bench trials. I've been in the administrative cases where how you handle a firearm, right, is really going to come back to affect you. And I told you, I think, a few shows ago that it's usually the mom. It's usually the mom, but it's not necessarily female, male oriented. But I usually hear the argument from that side. Well, dad has firearms, okay, and those are dangerous. The kids don't need to go over there. That kind of argument just irks me. Well, has he ever done anything? Has he ever used them inappropriately? No, he just has them over there.
You know, you just said something that made me think about. Somebody told me a story at the shop last night. They were in a location, and they happened to see a print of their handgun in their holster, okay, which is not illegal because there was no signs of. And the lady goes up to him and says, you need to leave. And he goes, why? You have a gun on. Well, there's no signs posted, man. No, but I have my child here. Well, then you might as well leave because I got the right to stay here. The attitude, the concept, the thought process of these guns scaring people, it's ridiculous, man. It's crazy.
It's just gone away from the society where I think kids
everybody gets offended.
Exactly, that too.
Well, and then there's the fact
sand
that
in it, man.
we fear what we don't understand. And let's face it, gun education, we've talked about this before, gun education is not as widespread as it needs to be.
And this we don't hold back. You know, we don't. I mean, we want people to be educated and knowledgeable, but trained about their weapons.
In less than 25 years, it's got to this. I came down here from New York, okay, to Texas, and I had my 12 gauge Remington Model 11, in the back window of my truck, and I had a sheriff's deputy pull me over thinking I was in trouble. He goes, "Hey man, is that a Browning?" That's the attitude. Now it's like, "Oh my God, you've got a gun in your closet," and they freak out. It's gone for in 25 years, not even 25 years, probably 10 to 15 years, ever since 9/11, man. 9/11 is increasing, but more so right around about 10 years ago, it just went crazy.
And that's why, if you're in a family law case, you need to be careful about how you store your weapons, and about how these are kept, and about how you portray yourself with these weapons, because those will be used against you. I promise. If there's any evidence, right, that you've not done something that well, that's a double negative. If you've done something you weren't supposed to do with these weapons, like not kept them in a safe place, left it out on the table, making it possibly accessible to a child, which is what we talked about. There's also if you've brandished it or used it in a way that is even concerning, right? We've had just what is the case in Belton with C.J. Grisham? The lady called in and said, "Well, these are concerning," or isn't that what she said? Something like that. It was odd. It was odd. The way they were carrying the weapons was odd, and so she calls the police, an emergency line, because people were oddly carrying weapons. It was just that they were carrying weapons, which is what made it odd. But just be careful about how you use them and what you have, and if you're going to have these, make sure you got the safe and you handle them properly, so that there can't ever be an allegation that you don't handle them properly.
I was given a question.
And watch Facebook. Golly.
I was given a question. Maybe you can answer this off the top of your head. Okay, I know you can't give me a definite, but let's use a Bursa handgun for example, because we talked about how, let's say the gun is on the table, the magazine's out, there's nothing in the chamber. We still say that's reckless. But what if this gun, the Bursa gun that has an internal gun lock, is locked? The key's been put on and turned in. The gun becomes an inert piece of metal. You cannot use it. How would that stand if a child had access to it, in your opinion?
And the magazine was in?
Okay, we'll say it's in, but trust me, I know what I'm talking about in this one, okay?
I know was the magazine in.
Let's just say yes. We'll say yes, it is. The magazine's in the gun. Okay, nothing in the chamber, which doesn't matter. It's still considered loaded. But the key mechanism, turn it, the gun is inert. You cannot use it until you unlock it. It's an internal lock.
I would say that it's readily dischargeable because of the definition.
Even with the lock.
And I realize that you cannot use it. I realize you cannot use it. It would not be fireable.
Right.
Right? But under the definition.
Could there be an exception to that definition? Because let's say somebody bought that gun specifically because they wear the key thing around their neck, so they have quick access to it, but they don't want to put their child in danger. So they thought it out. They said, "Here's what I can do." They use that particular type of gun, and Smith & Wessons do it as well on some of their guns. And I did that specifically because I did not want to be in violation of that law.
I think that's the gun you want, right? When you want to leave it on the nightstand at night.
Stocks of Taurus and Smith & Wesson just went up.
I think because look, you gotta have some practical sense in these things too. Remember, the first thing I learned in law school was torch class, torch 1. Right, it was the very first class I had. Okay, and we're talking about trespass. Okay, and she tells us the definition of trespass. Says this, that the guy crosses over the fence, walks on the grass, right, and realizes it's the wrong pasture, but he continues one more step, and then he walks off. And she's asking, "Is that trespass?" And there's all these kids talking about, they're giving very technical arguments, and then nobody's getting it right, and she says, "No, it's not trespass unless you get caught." Okay, and so unless you get caught, it's not a trespass, and so you got to realize you're probably not going to have this situation.
Like I'd be in jail today. I just haven't gotten caught.
So, hey man, plead the fifth. Tell me. So it's kind of like if they go and take the weapon and if they take it to school, you're going to get in trouble here. If you see them grab the firearm, yes, they were made accessible, but nobody else knows about this but you and the child.
I know, but after $10,000 and a good attorney, and I prove it to the court that I did it not intentionally, I'd be good to go, right?
And if it absolutely cannot fire, that there's no danger there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no danger. I'm not gonna. You're gonna try to get me to admit I'm expensive.
What about if, in a similar case, you have the firearm, but it has a gun lock on it, and the gun lock is active, but the magazine is nearby?
That's not right, because the magazine is not loaded. It's not readily dischargeable.
But you made that comment that it could be potentially reckless.
I would argue in your situation that it's not readily dischargeable. But I'm just telling you.
I'm not
makes
fighting
the
with you.
difference is the magazine being present in the
even in the gun that he's talking about, if the magazine's in there, I would argue that. I think that there's a really good good argument for that. But I'm telling you,
I bring it up.
I'm not going to tell you that's
tons
legal
of
right
people
now.
in my classes who ask me that question. That's why I bring up all these different freaking scenarios.
I'm not going to tell you, sitting right here with my license on the line, to do that and think that it's legal.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, I think under the definition,
But you
right,
see, that
the
answer that you
state
give-
is going to be able to charge you for it being readily charged. Now,
But
I
that
think I'm
answer
going
you're
to.
giving is a good answer to the person listening because they go, "Oh, it's one of those where I don't want to go down that path.
Exactly.
I want to make it clear. I'm not looking for you to commit yourself."
I think
But
there's a
because-
good argument to be made, but I also think under the words of the law, right, you have technically there is a technical
Ladies
violation.
and gentlemen, that is why I say if you don't pay attention to this segment of the show, you're crazy because what he's giving you the answers. When he doesn't give you the answer, that's a clear answer that you might want to change your policy on how you do things, okay? If he says no or yes, hey, man, I'm going to stick by it because the man knows what he's talking about. All right, look, times are ticking away. Ross, we are sponsored by Coupling Dodd Krebs Law Firm. Rick Dodd, awesome, sponsors the program. Part of it with all the other sponsors. You come on, attorney extraordinary, do a fantastic job. Why don't you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so with Rick being here, we're both private investigators too. I have my private PI license.
Clarify
We're
the Ricks.
employed by Mr. Howard over there at the partnership in Houston. We do some work there. Rick will talk about that in the segment later.
People are thinking Rick Dodd.
Oh, Richard Lee Momey, Rick Momey. Okay, and so Rick Momey is going to be the one on the interview here a little bit later. You can also call my law office. We do have Lone Star Recovery Company too, which is Rick Momey is going to talk about here later. But my law office for these LTC questions, we love responding to the listeners. We love advancing the issues. If you want to do that, you can email me at Benton, BENTON, at Watson.legal. That's Benton at Watson.legal. Just come see me at 105 East Main Street. I've got the milk cow and the really odd gray looking stucco building right on the back now since we're building on. And then you can call me at 254-605-4140. That's 254-605-4140. And make sure you call too about any appointments in Houston, or you want some PI work, some recovery work, collections. We love collecting judgments, right? And Rick Momey's been a good receiver for me. You can hit me up if you do on email. Make sure you leave your phone number so that I can call you back. We get questions a lot, and some people don't leave their phone number when they email. And I sometimes I can't get to the email, but I can call you. So make sure you leave your phone number.
Sounds great. Okay, everybody, look, we're going to take a quick break, Trey, and give me a short commercial break. I'll come back to some topics of interest, and then we'll get set up for the delicious Jamaican